OK，谢谢大家，我们参加我们今天的这个自闭症觉醒月的讲座。那么，尽管自闭症觉醒月是4月份，但是我们一直有这个讲员来参加我们的活动。尽管这个自闭症觉醒月是1个月，但对我们来讲是天天年年月月，这个可能是一辈子的事情。那么我们非常简单的再讲一下我们这个的讲座的一些组织，非常简单，因为很多人我们就知道了。那么自闭症的觉醒月，我们主要是今年是以理解、接纳、倡导为主题的，主要有影响力联合会及美国华人自闭症联合会，加上我们今天的Tech on the Spectrum 这是来自硅谷的一个这个多元化的组织举办的。那么我们OK， 那么影响力联合会是我们在纽约组织的一个公益机构，对于我们来说，我们特别在这个公益机构当中发起了支持自闭症、多动症以及抑郁症的3个特殊需要这个家长组织。那么这也很多人都知道我们这个家长群的一些基本的内容。另外一个呢是美国华人自闭症联合会，这是我们专注于服务于美国的自闭症的家庭以及个人的这个公益组织。那么今天呢，我们也很高兴的和Tech on the Spectrum， 这是我们在硅谷一些的这个多元化倡导人士组织的一个公益的一个团体。那么我们今天特别想重新的想介绍一下，也希望在美国的自闭症家长，我们要支持自闭症家庭护理法案，叫 Autism Family Caregiver Act。我们还是继续希望向各位家长，向自己选区的议员去打电话，要求他们支持这个法案。那么这个法案呢，主要是在全国范围当中建立25个国家培训中心给自闭症发育障碍的家长以及照顾者提供科学的有色症经验的培训。那么这个呢可以我们可以你可以打电话，你可以接造访，你可以到我们的到 Autism Speak 的网站去签署那么今年呢是我们第2次国会第2次想通过这个法案，希望得到更多的这个支持。那么我们今天呢非常高兴的请来了 Tim Goldstein， 这是我们在硅谷公司的一位资深的专家，那么他自己也是自闭症谱系那么今天他会以自己的经历来讲我们的这个分享的故事。Okay, so I'm going to turn to Cindy. Okay, so Cindy will be introducing her organization and also introducing Tim.
Yeah, thank you, Vic. 大家好，我是 Cindy 高，目前在谷歌担任全球广告交易平台资深的技术顾问。Tim Goldstein 是我的同事，在谷歌云担任资深的技术专家。我们因自闭症这个共通的领域而相识，原因也是因为我本人曾经一段时间被认为是阿斯伯格，虽然可能是一个误诊，因为这个诊断的体系到现在都还是有不同的争议。因此我也发现在 Google 这样的公司曾经都非常的 underrepresented 对于自闭症。那我就希望说，如果 Google 这样一家成功的公司居然都曾经没有这么去关注过这么一个小的领域，但其实是有非常多的同事痛苦于也因这个自闭症感到自己的身份而困惑。那如果这样的人在已经世界上这么成功的公司都有这样的困惑和身份的 struggle，如果我们这些人不站出来说话的话，谁才能够？那因此我也是希望说，通过这样发起的活动，能够让更多的家长看到希望，看到说其实如果是自闭症的孩子，等他成长成为成人，完全有机会，也有可能在这样的科技公司取得他应取得的成功。因此我们发起了 Tech on the Spectrum 的活动，也因此认识到了 Tim 等一系列非常多优秀的谷歌同事的支持。那接下来我也将非常隆重的请出 Tim 在成年54岁才被诊断为自闭症的谱系，也是阿斯伯格。那这个诊断对于他的个人生活和职业都有着深远的影响。 Tim 有过非常多的职业生涯，自行车的零售，他创建了世界级的滑雪和体育用品零售团队和供应商体系，也是在线和实体的连续创业者。那他的数据专家的意识也顺利帮助他转战到谷歌的科技领域。Tim 具有非常广泛的职业生涯，也非常积极的倡导神经多元化，特别是对于让神经多元性的员工可以在职场上面发挥出最大的贡献。Tim 他也是美国自闭症协会的董事会成员，担任多家公司的顾问，并在2023年入选全球50强年度神经多元传染者榜的榜单。那 Very welcome, Tim Goldstein. We're looking forward to hear more story about you, hear more about how we can advocate to become more successful in this area.
Well, thank you very much. And I have to say, first off, I very much appreciate inviting me. And I feel embarrassed that I only speak English, but you know us Americans, we live here, we think it's the whole world. We never learn other languages. So always so amazed when people handle multiple languages. So thank you. I appreciate everybody, bearing with me just being in English. Let me try and share my screen here, see if I can get the correct thing going. So what we're going to mostly look at, we're going to take a look at first, just what is neurodiversity, and a kind of a simple definition that I use to help explain it to other people. Instead of being a long, hard thing to explain, I think it needs to be something simple to explain, because it's just another way of people being. And then also we're going to talk about, besides a number of other things, but really look at being proud of being neurodistinct, and what is it that people that can do to help others start understanding more that we are people just like everybody else. We're not things that need to be fixed. We're people that can contribute to the world just like everybody else can. So neurodiversity, what is neurodiversity? Well, if we think about it, think about our eyes, for instance. Our eyes vary. There's people in the world that have brown eyes, people in the world that have green eyes, people have blue eyes, all different color eyes, different shapes of eyes. And we don't think of anything odd about that. We think that is normal for humans to have different eyes. And we don't think about, oh, those blue-eyed people, they're just like this, they're a certain way. And I happen to have blue eyes. Don't know if you can tell on the screen. So we don't think of that. We just think that's normal. But what we often don't think about is the brain. And our brain, most complex organ in our body, going to have more variation than something simple as an eye. And medical research has shown there is huge variation in brains, in the thickness of layers, the way that the folds are, the way the wiring between sections of the brain fit. And what we also believe is, as your brain varies, it is going to make you perceive, process, and think in different ways. And in neurodiversity, we think that is normal for humans to have different ways to think because we have different brains. So that really is the simple definition of neurodiversity. It's not complex. It's just simple, that normal for human brains to vary. When human brains vary, the way we perceive, process, think varies also. So very simple to explain. And it's, again, normal. It's the important part. It's not something strange. It's not medical condition to fix, just normal for human beings. So I use this example, created this idea to help give picture to it, because I think having a picture always helps explain something better than just having words for it. So I created this idea of what I call NeuroCloud. And in NeuroCloud, first, most important thing is that NeuroCloud is all humans. It doesn't matter where you are, where you come from, your background, your culture, your color of your skin, none of that matters. All humans are in neurocloud. And like clouds, there's usually not distinct area in clouds. There might be areas that are different, darker, lighter spot in cloud, but there's no sharp line that sections off one part of cloud from another. So that's an idea that we have in the cloud, as we have all humans in there. Things move around and kind of group together. Now, my art skills are not the best, so I do have sharp line, even though reality is we shouldn't have sharp line. When we look in top left-hand side, we can see the area that has that blue line around it, kind of dark blue line. And that's an area of people who have more similarities in the way that they have different human traits. And the human traits are represented as different colors, and how dark or light that kind of color is represents the intensity of the trait. You know, real bright, they have lots of that trait. You know, light color, they have less of that trait. So we have this group that they kind of even balance of traits overall. And that group we call neurotypical. Now, neurotypical group is the group that tends to be able to set what the norms are and expectations for the world. Because, not just because they have similar traits, they are all individuals, of course, they do vary, but they tend to be cohesive. They stick together. They agree to seeing things certain ways. And that gives them more power than people who see things differently. Now, when we step outside of that area, so cross over that dark blue line, which really shouldn't be, again, a line, should be gradation, kind of move slowly from one side to other, intermixing between. But you have my art skill, so this is what we have. All the area outside of neurotypical are neurodistinct. And neurodistinct individuals would be people who have autism, people who have ADHD, dyslexia, all different conditions that make us perceive, process, and think about the world differently. And we tend to have, as you can see just in the colors and the dark and lightness of the colors, we tend to have a little more mix of human traits, maybe at higher intensity or lower intensity than is normal. And again, it's a mix. Maybe we have one human trait, we have high intensity of it. Another human trait, maybe we have a little lower than normal intensity of it. But that is what makes us very unique and gives us unique perspectives. So important to remember, these are all human traits. There is no such thing as autism trait, ADHD trait, because when you go and look at it, we can find people that we would consider neurotypical, or some people call that normal. I hate to call it normal because what is normal really? But we can find people that have that exact same trait. So can't be autism trait if we also find it in other people. So it's human trait. Difference is maybe it's at different value, different level. So human trait on common levels is the way I think of it. The other thing to take away from neurocloud idea is the further apart you are in neurocloud, the more challenging it is to communicate with each other. So even if you are in the same section, neurotypicals talking to neurotypicals, but further apart, maybe they had vastly different experiences, they came from different cultures. So even though traits are similar, they're going to have more challenge communicating because culture experience is different. And if you have to communicate from neurotypical to neurodistinct or neurodistinct to neurotypical, even more challenging because you have very different way of perceiving and processing and thinking. And we'll take a look at a couple examples of how easy it is for those kinds of things to cause communication problems. And then what happens, because neurotypical is dominant, they judge neurodistinct as being wrong. When not wrong, just seeing it a different way is truth. So I love to use this picture. And oh, I don't know if I have lost my chat window. There it is. I don't know if anybody wants to put in the chat window, what is it that they see in this picture? And this is a fun picture because it gives real good experience. Yes, definitely horses in there. Yep, a horse. We have horses. Yes, toad or frog. Yes, toad or frog also. So we have both horses and we have frog or toad. Guess what? Both right. Interesting, though. This is so good about showing how different people perceive, process, and think differently. We're looking at identical picture exactly at the same time, moment of time. But some people saw the frog or toad, and some people saw the horse first. How could we see completely different things in the exact same picture? And the reason is because our brains work differently. We perceive things differently. We process things differently. And if you didn't see the opposite thing, if you tip your head to left, the frog is easier to see. It's sitting in the yellow area. If you tip your head to the right, face of horse is what was the frog, and the mane is down going through the blue. So easier to see if you tip like that to see both sides. But important thing about this, not only that we saw completely different things, even though we were looking at identical image, very important thing to see is that it's your interpretation that you take as reality. If we didn't talk about what was here, you just saw a picture quickly, whichever you saw, you would be convinced that's all that was there. Now, we've talked about it so everybody can see that there is two different things, but what you see, how you interpret it becomes your reality, even though for somebody else, it might be a different reality. They may see horse. So if you see frogs, other people see horse. We have very hard time communicating with each other if we can't agree that they're both there. So this is a story out of my own personal life. And as is common amongst autistics, we have, human trait that of doing same thing, liking to do it consistently. We're known for doing that maybe more than other people are. And I was on a kick for eating. And again, that's an area that a lot of autistics, not all, of course, we're all individuals, but a lot of autistics, we tend to eat same thing quite frequently. And I was on a kick of eating sandwiches for lunch that were roast beef sandwiches on potato bread. Maybe not good health kick, but it was very tasty, and that was what I was eating. So we would go shopping, my wife and I go shopping for my bread. We'd go into the store, and this store never put things in the same place. So we'd walk in the aisle for the bread, and I would start reading the labels because I'm looking for my brand of bread, because it has to be a special brand. Of course, it can't be just any brand. So I'm reading labels, trying to find my brand of bread. And my wife just always would point and say, honey, it's right over there. And she'd point right to it every time. She was right. She would just find it. I don't know how, just immediately. So after about a year and a half, I finally asked her, how is it that you just step in the aisle and can point right to the bread? I can read pretty fast, but you always point right at it. And what she told me was, you see on your wrapper, there's that orange circle on the end of wrapper. No other brand of bread has that orange circle. Your brand, the one you like, is the only one that has that orange circle. Now, I can see color perfectly fine. No problem with seeing different color. And when she pointed to orange, I could see that there was an orange circle there. Problem was, I wasn't looking for color or orange circle. To me, all the meaning was in words. So I was looking for words because to me, that's where I look for meaning. But my wife actually is ADHD, so she is also neurodistinct. She is very picture oriented, very visual in how she sees things. She was just looking for distinguishing marking that she could look at. And this orange circle was very, very distinguishing marking. So not that one is right, one is wrong, but in this case, for finding my bread, her method was very much better and much quicker because she could just look up and down aisle, see orange circle, bang, that is my bread. Me trying to read all the labels. But I did finally win. Maybe about 8-9 months ago, we were in looking for her coffee. Same store, one aisle over. And we go down through the aisle and she comes up to me and says, honey, I think we have to go to a different store because they don't have my coffee. And I reach up on the shelf and I hand her coffee. Well, how come it worked that way? They had rebranded the package. Package no longer looked like what she thought the picture should look like. Now had pictures where it used to be solid color, but the words were same words. They said same brand, said same flavor. So again, was one better? Was one worse? No, different situation. One was better, one was worse. Change situation, other way around. So always important to recognize that just because one method isn't really good in one situation doesn't mean it's not good method in different situations. And that's why we want people that have different ways of looking at things, different ways of perceiving things. World is complicated. World is complex nowadays. We need all the different ways we can get people's opinions, people's perceptions, people's point of view on things, so that we can find the best one to solve problem for everybody. Usually it's a mix together. So works best when my wife and I go shopping together because I find them by word, she finds them by picture, different items. One will work better than the other. So this, I couldn't find statistics in China. Probably part of the problem is I don't read Chinese, so it made it hard to find statistics in China, but these are statistics out of USA. And this comes from clevelandclinic.org. So it's always interesting when we look at the medical culture, when they express how prevalent different conditions are, they never give them to a way that is easy to compare. They will say it's 1 out of 37. And then another one will be 1 out of 10,000. So it's hard numerically put those all together. So I went and took not hard math, of course, but went and made them all so they were based out of 100. So we can easily compare them. And I was doing this because I was working with a client that wanted me to do presentations showing how neurodiversity fit together with traditional diversity. And I think it fits together very well. Actually, I think neurodiversity explains traditional diversity because really what's the difference between the different groups? It's not whether skin color, it's not what country you come from, what culture you were brought up in. It's how you think that's different because of those things. So neurodiversity, I think, really can explain all types of standard diversity categories. But when I was doing that, I thought it would be good to show how common, how often, frequent is somebody come from a group that we would consider neurodistinct. So I went and took the numbers, and you can see them on the screen. We have things like autism is about 3 out of 100, but we take anxiety, that's about 30 out of 100. When we add them all up, we get 92 out of 100 people at some point in a year have one of these conditions causing them challenge, or it's just showing a lot. Now, we do know that there is co-occurrence, medically they call it comorbidity. And that is that you can have multiple conditions at the same time. So I, for instance, diagnosed with autism, but I also have anxiety, high anxiety that I'm treated for medically. And I also have a mild form of bipolar that I'm also treated for medically. So we know that the number, you can't just add them up like I did there, where we get 92. That wouldn't give us the right number because of co-occurrence. But on the other hand, I don't think even when we take all co-occurrence into account that we can get that down below 50 out of 100 being different in the way their brain works, perceives, processes than the rest of the world. So I really think that neurotypical, this idea that there's this normal, that there's this way that everybody should be, is really an illusion. We have a group very cohesive. They agree together. They look at the picture. Somebody might see something different, but they'll go along with the rest of the group and say, no, it's what group says. And that is how I think we have neurotypical becoming standard. And everybody else, we say, oh, they're different. There's something, they are not right. They should be thinking this way. But when we look at the real numbers, no, there's great variety. Why should everybody think the same way? We would only see the frog. We would never see the horse if we all thought, the way of seeing the frog. So I think this is just a good way to point out and illustrate that this is much more common, that neurodistinct individuals, whether it's autism, ADHD, bipolar, OCD, all these things we consider being under neurodiversity, the neurodistinct, far more common than most people think, because most people don't talk about what they have or their condition. They not made in society where it's easy to talk about it, discouraged to talk about it in many societies. So it's good to look at the numbers, because we really can start realizing many more people that are like us or like our children than we really think there are, because most people aren't speaking up and saying, no, I do have human traits at different levels. I do see things in a different way. So I think it's very important to recognize that normal is really a small group that everybody just agrees with. It's really not most people. So I couldn't find, and again, maybe this is because in culture in China, not super common for people to come forward and talk about this. So I did try finding if I could find some Chinese that were autistic that would be well-known autistic Chinese. And unfortunately, I couldn't find any. Again, maybe part of it is, language barrier that, maybe on site where it's in Chinese and then I didn't know what it said. So these are just people that come from different backgrounds and a little bit international, because we do have Susan Boyle. And for those who don't know, she came from UK, and she went on to one of those shows where you do, show your talent. And she was an amazing singer. And she had always just stayed at home and taken care of her mom till she was in her 40s or something like that, is her story. Amazing, amazing singer. And she's autistic. Elon Musk, I think, everybody's heard of Elon Musk by now, autistic. Then we have Barbara McClintock. She's a chemist, very Nobel Prize winning chemist. Satoshi, he Japanese, and he created Pokemon. So, most people know Pokemon, I think. Daryl Hannah, US actor. Dan Aykroyd, comedian, actor from Canada. So here's people that are very well known that everybody looks up to because they're famous. They have, very talented. And these people were willing to say that they were autistic. So these aren't just people we're saying we think are. These people have themselves told the world that they are autistic. And in many cases, they've actually said it's because of that they were able to do what it is that they have done. So one thing that I think causes challenges is the way we look at medical things. And of course, this falls into the world of medical when we're talking about autism and ADHD and bipolar and all that kind of stuff. But when we're talking about diagnosis in this case, we have to look at what is really diagnosis. Now, most medical things. You go in, you can take a test. They can look at your DNA. They can put you in, MRI scanner and, see what's there. They hook you up to, EEG and look at waves from your brain. They take blood tests and it's positive or it's negative. You have condition or you don't have condition. Very clear. But that is not how it works when we're dealing with these conditions. The way it works is actually crazy when we think about it. The way it works is there is this thing called the DSM, which is Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Health. And it is considered the Bible globally for mental health conditions. And they get together groups for the committees, and the groups take 5 or 6 years, and they argue about what should be the criteria to diagnose somebody with having a particular condition. So first off, it's not that they come in and say, we do this test, and when we find this one thing, then they have something. It's a bunch of people saying, I think it's this. No, I think it's this. So we start off that they just come up with this menu where you have 3 things out of this area and 2 things out of this area, then this is your diagnosis. Then how do we apply that diagnosis? Even crazier. Either, as we see a little picture on the left, is assessment. They have you maybe on computer, but actually because the way they protect them, it's crazy. More often still, it's a big stack of paper test. They do assessment. And they have you do assessment. And if you get a certain score, they say that you have this condition. But if you don't get certain score, you do not have that condition. Which, funny part is, you could have same person take exact same test multiple times, different days, and their scores will change. But they still base it off of some score. And even, I think, funnier, say just for putting number out there, that score is if 50 above is autism, somebody gets 49, they don't get diagnosis, but are they any less challenged? Are they suffering any less in dealing with things than the person that got 50? I don't think so. I think that it's very arbitrary that we just draw a line and say on this side, it's autism, on this side, it's just normal. When it's really not true. Very, very, slope, more challenges, more challenges as you go up it. You really can't make this discrete line, but they do. Or other way it's done, particularly with children, is person on the right. They go in, they observe, they look at a child. They also do it with adults this way. With adults, they talk, they interact with the adult or child, and then they think, which one of those conditions do I think fits them the best? And that's how you end up with being diagnosed as having one of these conditions. So it really comes down to, it's not like medical test where you have, COVID that they can test and there you go, you have that virus. It's what you have, or you have aneurysm in some part of your body. They look at it with X-ray or MRI, and they can see blood vessel is expanding. It's obvious. Here, just judgment. They just make judgment based off of what some other people said this condition is defined as. So in other words, we just make these things up. We as humans have just made these things up and said, if somebody acts different enough, we're going to put some kind of name on them and say that they are not correct as a human. So very bad of us. Why should we take and say, because somebody acts different, that they're wrong, that they have a medical problem? I have 3 brothers. We all act different. I don't think we all have medical problems, difference. We just are different people. We're individuals. Everybody is different from each other. So very unfair to go and say, oh, these are autistic people just because somebody came up with some crazy way to make that grouping. So what makes it even harder to understand autism and the various conditions is how we look at it. And how we look at it is not in the top. This is how we look at most medical things. You either have low amount of that, medical challenge, like say common cold, low cold, mild, not too bad, really bad colds, headache, stuffy nose, ache, terrible, horrible. But that is not how these conditions work. These conditions are much more complex. Bottom row is chart I came up with. I call them interactional indicators. And these actually are my particular charts. And I know the little words around the chart you can't read. Just can't fit it all on there in ways that big enough to be able to read it. So I will just talk about the one that is on leftmost side that's called communication. Way that you interpret chart is the more blue that you see, the more challenge that particular item underneath it is for that person. So, I've been talking to you here for a while, communicating with you. So most of you probably figure I've been pretty good at communicating. I at least can put some words together in English, not in other language, but I can do it in English. So most people assume if I can communicate outward like this, that inward I can take in communication just as well. But reality is, the ones you see very little blue in is my outward communication. I do that easy, but inward communication, I don't pick up the emotional nuances. I don't pick up necessarily the mood of the room, of what's going on, the way the conversation is flowing. I understand the words, and that's what I get out of it is the words. I don't get the rest of the context of the conversation. So I struggle in those situations of maybe saying the wrong thing at the wrong time because I didn't pick up that people were, at that point feeling a certain way. And what I said was not in that same mood that they were feeling. So that is much more what these conditions are like. Everyone is an individual, and we're going to have different areas that are challenges for us, but different areas that we do very well in. So very confusing to people because it's not like cold where everybody goes, oh, I understand cold. Very simple. Nose is clogged, throat sore, whatever. That's cold. But autism, ADHD, dyslexia is so complex, so complicated, so many factors. And every individual has a different mix because just like in everything else, we're all individuals. Every human is individual. Nobody identical to the other. Even identical twins still have differences between them. So these are just some of the traits that, I'm not going to read through them, but these are just some of the traits that are very commonly associated to neurodistinct individuals. And it may be that they're showing it at higher intensity than is, considered normal. Maybe it's at lower intensity. But the important part is because people are judging based upon the intensity of these different traits, very often somebody who is neurodistinct is going to be misinterpreted because they're showing traits in a way that somebody else judges as being, oh, they're angry because they are talking very, loudly, and they are very, very, monotone, very, one note, they just going like this, very mad. But that could just be the way the person talks. In autism, very common for a person to talk very single one level, very, boring to listen to. But that is just the way they talk. They're not angry. They're not bored. They're not disengaged. But because people interpret these things based upon how they would be if they were sounding or doing or whichever one of these particular traits we want to look at, they then misinterpret and misjudge the other person because they apply their criteria to somebody else, and criteria doesn't apply that way. So this gets into why is it that we should advocate? Why is it that we should step up and talk about this stuff and be open, particularly if you are an individual who has one of these conditions? And I hate to call them conditions, but we have to use some word. So why, if you're neurodistinct, should you do that? This particular chart came from Japanese roboticists, and it was in the mid-70s. And as you're probably familiar, in Japan, robotics, they tend to make things that are more realistic. They work on making them human with, facial expressions and movement and such. Whereas American roboticists tend to make things that function, that look like machines. I'm not sure in China. I think China also tends to go more looks like machines, does the job in the factory. We don't care what it looks like, just needs to work. But Japanese tend to go very much for look. So what this roboticist found was, when you start down on the left-hand side, you have something total non-human, Roomba vacuum cleaner, round thing rolls around on your floor. Love mine, keeps the floor clean, but I don't think much of it. I don't feel emotional attachment to Roomba, vacuum cleaner. But as it starts getting more human, we go and paint little eyes on it or something, we put cute little tail on it or something like that. We start feeling more human connection to it. And what roboticists found was, as you keep making it closer and closer to human, people feel more connection to it. But when it gets really close to being human, but there's something wrong, just something not quite right, people all of a sudden fall into what they call uncanny valley, is term he created. And uncanny valley, people all of a sudden reject it. It's like, no, there's something wrong with that thing. It's not human. It's not robot, but it's not human. It's just, reject it. And then when you get it perfect, then it goes back up and people then relate to it, because now it is perfect as being human. So I think this is what happens to us who are neurodistinct. Many of us are neurodistinct, and I say a large number of us neurodistinct. In many situations, you cannot tell. You wouldn't know if I didn't say, and I wasn't introduced as, being autistic, you probably would never know I was autistic. But if you were to spend enough time with me, sooner or later, I would be doing some things that would be, falling into the traits that people would judge as being autistic. Maybe, saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. You find out that I keep eating the same thing for 3 years straight. I eat the exact same meal for lunch. And when people do that, what happens is at first they accept them into the group because, oh, you're just like us. You're one of us. Then something pops out that they go, you're not one of us. And then you're rejected. And that's how I get fired. Been fired many times because all of a sudden you're not one of us. You are different. So I think it's very important to let people know ahead of time that I'm autistic. There's going to be sometimes I do things differently than you do them. And if they are aware and they know, it's not suddenly a surprise that, oh my gosh, you are not one of us. It's, oh, he told us he does things like that sometimes. So the way to stay out of uncanny valley and get rejected is let people know ahead of time that you do things differently than other people do. Sometimes it has benefit. Sometimes, maybe their way is better, just like between my wife and I. Not her way is always better, not my way is always better. It can be either. So that is why I think that you have to speak up about being unique, because when your uniqueness comes out, people will often reject that uniqueness if you don't let them know ahead of time that you're not exactly like they are. So disclosing, these are just some tips and ideas on disclosing. The first thing is start telling the world who you are. If you don't disclose and tell the world who you are, then who else is going to tell the world who you are? I was actually teaching a class to a group in India earlier this week. And it was way too late at night. Trust me, it was from 10:30 at night till 12:30 a.m. in the morning. So not my best time of day by any means. And I tend to, and this is called executive function, of being able to juggle many things at the same time, is executive function. I tend to be bad about switching from slides that we're teaching from over to the application that I'm teaching about, to forget to hit the button to show them the opposite thing as I switch back and forth. So I just told them I'm autistic. I forget that. So if I forget to do it, please just tell me. And I didn't feel bad. I mean, so what? There's, 20 clients on the other end of the thing, halfway around the world. In their culture, they don't talk about autism either. But isn't that better than, me not letting them know that I'm not going to feel bad if somebody tells me I forgot to switch the screen? Just let them know that's something I do. I'm part of my autism. So you got to tell the world who you are. Of course, before that, you got to decide if disclosing is for you. Sometimes some people don't want to take that risk. I think it's worth doing, but it is certainly something to think through and make sure that it really is something that fits for you. Advocating, if you're going to disclose, that's the first step in advocating, because it's hard to advocate as somebody who comes from a certain group if you're not willing to say you're part of that group. You can advocate as being somebody as a supporter, but that's different from somebody who is part of the group. Good, we want supporters. We want all of you, parents and such, we need your help. But even more important, we need people who have, in this case, autism, to step up and advocate for themselves and say, I'm person, I'm human, I have value just like everybody else has value. So have a plan for disclosing. Don't just say, if and not uncommon in autism, say the wrong thing, hurt somebody's feelings. And don't just blurt out that, oh, sorry, I'm autistic. That's probably not a good way to do it. Probably better to have a plan of how you're going to tell somebody, which is next point, create your disclosure narrative. So if you're going to tell somebody, tell them something about, what is autism to you? How does it fit in your life? What's it make you able to do and, give you strengths to do? And it doesn't that long, little 1-2 minute story that you tell them about yourself and where autism is part of your life and who you are. Makes it very easy because now you have the story to tell. So very easy to disclose when you know what your story versus trying to make it up as you go. Very often when you are disclosing and talking to other people, they don't know about autism. I mean, they've heard the word and they probably have seen TV shows. They've seen, so very bad examples of what autism actually is, but they don't really understand it. I think pretty much worldwide, autism is usually thought of by people that don't know. It's a male child. That's what they think of. Male child is autistic. They don't think female can be autistic. They don't think autistic adults. They just think male child. And we know that's wrong. We have male, we have female, we have adult, we have child. So you have to be prepared to help educate them about what autism is and provide additional resources. If you're going to tell, say you're adult, you're going in workplace, I always tell my manager when I first start, I'm autistic. This is the best way to work with me. And I give him or her resources. Here are 10 tips about working with autistic individual. And I point out the ones that really apply for me. So I give them resources so that they're not going off of their maybe misconception. They now have somebody saying, yes, I'm autistic. And if you do these things, I will be able to do much better for you than if you just try and treat me same as everybody else. And those things aren't big. Those things are simple for me. It's say things literally, say exactly what you mean. Do not use, coloration of words by the tone you use. Do not, put emotional spin on what you're saying. Just say it straight like it's from dictionary. Then I'll understand it. And I'm not going to get my feelings hurt. I'm going to get my feelings hurt if I can't understand you. If you do that, then I'll understand. So if you don't speak up for yourself, nobody's going to speak up for you. Another thing to explain is you're a unique person. Everybody's a unique person. We're all unique. It's just when you're neurodistinct, you're a little more unique. And explain your strengths and challenges. And as I said, I just with my manager, I actually have a sheet that I created, and it came from, well, I created it by myself, but then I work with Vanderbilt University, and we made it a resource that they use now that you can use in the workplace to help your manager know more specifically about you. So explain, this is where I have strengths, this is where I have challenges. Then they know best how you can be best employee, best worker for them. And then the last thing is disclosing is not a free pass. This is something that I think I see too much in, maybe it's just American youth, I don't know. But in younger generation, they think if they say they're autistic, then they can do anything they want and get everything they need. And the answer is no, it's not free pass. It's just explaining that this is my difference, but I still have to do my job. I still have to fit in, with the social of the organization. I have to be a good member of society. So it's not free pass, but it does give people warning. So when you are doing something that maybe doesn't fit in the way they want it to, that they'll explain to you, instead of saying you're in trouble now because you didn't do this right, they'll instead go, oh, that's right. Tim's autistic. Let me explain this away so he can understand it. And I bet you it's not that he doesn't want to do it right way. It's that he doesn't know what right way is because he perceives it differently. If you're particularly in the workplace, but this could fit also for children, there's a website. It's called askjan.org. And it's actually maintained by a branch of US government. And it has all different types of disabilities. And then it has accommodations and ways that can help different challenges that those groups have. So very, very handy. So you just go to askjan.org. And when you get to askjan.org, it will be a little confusing to find it. You just go to this A to Z that's up at the top. It's got the yellow box around it. Click on that. And there will be a whole list of all different conditions. And you can click on anxiety. You can click on autism. You can click on ADHD. And it will give all different suggestions about things that could potentially help a person with that to better interact, to better fit in, to better complete their job. So very, very useful, even with children and such. It give you some ideas. Often they'll fit, and most of them don't cost anything. It's just doing something a little different way is all. Most of them have virtually no cost. So very, very good resource to look at, particularly if you're in the work world, but even applies for parents if you're trying to understand maybe some of the challenges as your child is getting older and getting into new environments as they're moving through school and such. Good resource to look at. So I would highly recommend. Then if you want to see some more stuff and some videos of what I have, you can just take a picture of that QR code, and there's a little free video course. It's got a couple different modules. And as you probably figured out, I kind of use a humorous approach. So, welcome to Universe, talking kind of like how I see the world. And I think I live in different universe almost. Things are different in my universe than others. Down the Rabbit Hole goes back to, story of Alice in Wonderland. Where she went down the rabbit hole and there was this magical world down there. So we take you to the magical world. And then the world of techies and geeks. I live in the geek world. I'm, in the computer and tech industry. And there's lots of autistic, ADHD. There's a lot of neurodistinct people in that industry. Not that you're always going to be a great computer programmer if you have autism, but there are a lot of us that are there. And then finding new ways to connect. So just different ideas of how can we better connect across those barriers. So either that URL or the QR code, and the the presentation we can make available. So if you don't get it now, you can get it later. We'll make the deck available. It's also will be in the recording. So that's it. Questions, answers. I'm glad to answer any questions anybody wants. And when I say all topics are fair, I mean all topics. You can ask anything you want.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. First, that's so awesome. I think this will a lot of refresh and a new perspective to the audience. 所以我们现在来，希望大家能够踊跃提出自己的问题。
So Tim, so I have a question for you. So, I know that you're late diagnosis, maybe in your 50s,
Yeah.
right? So, and you probably did not realize you are on spectrum when you were young, right?
Correct.
You probably never heard the words, what's called autism or Asperger or something, right?
Well, yeah, I graduated from high school in 1977.
97.
So
oh.
back then, all that they thought well, first off, in most of the world, nobody knew about Asperger's work at that point because Asperger was associated with Nazi Germany. So in most of the world, it didn't get out. So all they knew about was the type of autism that it's referred to as a Connors style autism, which was nonverbal children.
Yes.
So
like a remake, like it.
Yeah. So obviously I'm plenty verbal, so there's no way that then anybody would have thought that I was autistic because from what we knew at the time and the way they called it was only nonverbal children. My working concept all the way until I got diagnosed. Well, probably not when I was young. I mean, I didn't know the difference when I was young. I just was in my own little world and, didn't know. But once I got into the work world, high school, got in the work world, things like, older than that, my assumption was the world was stupid. That was it. I mean, I just assumed the world was stupid because I could see things and see things in ways that they couldn't. And if you don't know there's something different about you and you see something and other people don't, what else are you going to conclude? That they're just probably, the world's stupid. But what I found when I got diagnosed, I started studying this a huge amount. I think anybody, familiar with some autism knows special interest is something that is associated. Human trait, all humans have special interests. We just really have deep special interests. So autism became my special interest. And what I realized was it wasn't that the world's stupid. The world is not stupid. Okay, there are some stupid people, but the world overall is not stupid. The problem was very ineffective communication between us. Because I thought and perceived differently, and a lot of humans communicate with a lot of emotion tied into the communication, which I did not pick up. We had terrible communication between ourselves, between me and the outside world. And that's when I realized the problem is it's a communication barrier, not a intellectual capability barrier.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I personally, from my son, is he probably is not that on the what do we call the function level, maybe high function, but look at his way of thinking. They have a lot of what we call the rigid behavior, but the rigid behavior is because in his mind the word should be followed step by step.
Yeah.
Anyway, right. And, I understand very young when we so many trouble, understand him, we don't know what's going on, what trick him to be tantrum something, but realize when we learn the autism, we know that in his mind, the word, everybody around him should be do the rules he understand.
Yeah.
You bring rules, he would. So he's more logically thinking than the other side, like emotion, intuition, everything there.
Yeah. Example I have of that is kind of interesting. I was taking a vacation. And you know how it is as you're getting ready for vacation at work, you always have a whole lot of things to tie up and take care of before you take vacation. So I got overloaded on the last day. There was just more things that I needed to do than I could get done. So I had some extra time planned in before I actually were leaving. So I just told, there was a couple clients that I wasn't able to get their things done. So I just let them know and copied my manager that, you know, I'll take care of the stuff in the morning. Sorry, I wasn't able to get it to you today. I just got overwhelmed. So I get this message from my manager the next day and she wants to meet with me. Well, I've had this experience before. When your manager wants to meet with you the first day of vacation is not usually a good sign. And we start talking and she's telling me how I shouldn't have done that. And it was all wrong. And I don't know. I thought that was being a very responsible person of saying, I'm sorry, I couldn't accomplish it, but I will take care of this for you in the morning. I couldn't understand why she thought it was wrong. I finally found out because she thought that you should never say you're overwhelmed. I don't know. Why not admit to them? Your customer gets overwhelmed too. I mean, we all understand overwhelm. So at any rate, in the discussion, at one point she says to me, Tim, I think you should look for another job. So I said, isn't this one we call HR in now? Because I'm sure she's firing me. And after HR came in, and she says, okay. And it's like, she's baffled of why I'm saying to call HR in. But she went with it. And we got HR involved. And after enough back and forth, what I found out was in her inflection, in her tonality. And she's a Chinese American. Matter of fact, it just happened to be. So she was actually saying it with the inflection of, I'm concerned about how this is affecting you. She wasn't saying I'm firing you. She was saying, I think for your, long-term health, but she didn't say it in words. She said it in emotional tone of, I care, I'm concerned. I missed that. I only heard, look for a new job.
You like filled out all the emotional stuff there. You only know the words, hey, find another job. That means you're fired.
Exactly. And, when you put it in the situation of it's the first day on vacation, your boss is wanting to talk to you first day of vacation. It made perfect sense. It was very logical that she was saying, you're in trouble.
Okay, we have some, Linda, you have any?
I don't think I'm the first. I don't think I'm the first one.
Okay.
I think we've got people in front of me. I'll wait.
Okay. Rebecca? Yeah, you're mute. So.
Thank you for coming up forward to tell us this. First, I would like to know what make you want to go diagnose, at the age of 50. Actually, I see that's a trend in my husband.
It was actually very funny. My wife told me to go get myself fixed. That's the way I went and got diagnosed.
Is it through a psychiatrist or, because
she had been struggling. She had been having some challenges herself. So she went to the family doctor first. And family doctor, prescribed antidepressants, I think it was for her. And that helped her some with her condition. And then she, told me that I need to go get myself fixed. So I went to the family doctor also, just because it seemed to work for her. And they also put me on a medication. And it did. It made the world better. I was a little less mad at everybody all the time. And then I, being logical thinking kind of style that I have, I just thought if family doctor can do something that made me feel like I could, work better with the world and feel better about the world and myself, I bet if I went to specialists, went to psychiatrist, I bet you they could do an even better job. So then I went to the psychiatrist, and that's when they actually ended up diagnosing me as being autistic. The family doctor just knew that I was having problems with high anxiety, that, I was reacting very, very short with people, very, harsh reaction to people and such. So that's how it was. My wife told me, go get myself fixed.
Yeah, I'm also in the medical field. And I hardly ever heard any adult get diagnosed at that age, though.
It's so common now. It's crazy. And maybe it's here, just in the US, and in the tech world again. I work, a lot of people in the tech world that are
they tend to give them like a psyche diagnosis. I heard you say you have bipolar. So did they give you bipolar diagnosis first, or they give you autism diagnosis? I mean, that's a lot of common area in both diagnoses, though.
It was the bipolar, and the type of bipolar I have is what they call hypomania. So hypomania meaning, hypo less than. So hypomania, you live on the high side, the manic side all the time, but you don't go so manic that you get yourself in trouble, but it certainly is to the point that people have to justify a little bit what you're doing, but it's not so far out that you can't justify it. And then when you get burned out, too many hours of work, too long, then you drop to the depression side. And then a couple of days worth of good sleep, right back to the hypomanic side.
Understand.
And once that was under control, then it started becoming obvious about my thought patterns and the way I perceive the world. And that's when, autism diagnosis, but the hypomania kind of hid it all, because all you saw was I was just flat going, 1,000 miles an hour all the time until I burned out, and then, recharge, and then I'd go 1,000 miles an hour at a time. You couldn't really see everything else. It was hidden underneath it.
Yeah, if we're talking about autism, I know in the mainstream medicine, they don't have any medication to prescribe for that. But for the bipolar, they do have something. For my curiosity, what kind of agent they give it to you and you say it works for you? Because that's what my spouse really needs at this time. We do. Huh?
Lithium.
Lithium.
Lithium carbonate.
Yeah.
Okay, lithium. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah. Another question I have is that I feel that the societies, I never know how it works. That, because my younger one has autism and and he's high functioning, so I'm anticipate he will be able to work. But how did you tell them all of your medical history? Because as I know, most of people kept it secretly, but it's okay. People are more accepted about autism because they need to know, because sometimes, there's something will trigger autistic person, they might not able to handle well. But the other part of the diagnosis, did you disclose to them how well the world accepted? Because I also know a lot of autistic kid or person or adult, they have turned out to be having some anxiety problem. I don't know, is that okay to disclose, and what the impact on the employment opportunity, something like that? I'm really, really concerned about that.
Well, it's very different, of course, between individuals, because, and I actually like to use the terms personally, and instead of using high function and low function, because you really don't know what that means. I like to use the terminology of high support or low support.
Okay.
Because it really gives you an idea. If they're low support, okay, that means they might need a little bit of help, but versus saying high functioning, which is like, well, I don't know, just the way it comes across to me, saying high or low support just comes across better, I think. But as far as with the employer, now I'm in somewhat of a unique situation that you just put my name in the internet and you'll find out I'm autistic right away. So I always tell employers, right from the get-go, because I would rather control the narrative myself versus them going to check me out on LinkedIn and find out that, I'm an autism self-advocate and talk all over the place about it. That's not a problem for most people. Most people don't have it plastered all over the internet like I do. So my general advice is, if the person is low enough support that they're able to go through the interview process successfully without divulging, without disclosing, then don't disclose. Why take the chance that they're going to be biased and hold it against you if you can make it through just fine. Now, if you have more support needs and you need to tell them, you've just got to really look at it this way. If it impacts your getting the job, it's probably not the right place to work for, because it's going to be a problem for them as long as you work for them. So if it's, more where it impacts you, then, you've got to say something at the interview, or you probably won't get through. And if you do get through, it's probably a place that's willing to accept that you do have, some issues they need to help you with. But if you can get through the interview without, I say go through without, but the first time you meet your new manager, once you're hired, tell them. Because then you avoid that problem of you're asking lots of questions because you need the details, because, it always amazes me how people think you can actually do the right thing that they want when they're only going to tell you one or two things about what it is that they are really doing. They don't explain the whole thing. They somehow think you're going to read their mind. And, so better to say up front, hey, I'm autistic and I need lots of details for me to be able to put together the correct picture and deliver exactly what you want. And now they know you're going to ask lots of questions.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so Linda, you want to?
Yes. Hi, Tim. Thanks so much for your speak. And I think this is the most easy. You put everything together in such an easy way, very easy to understand. Thank you so much for putting the Chinese part too, is to make it so
that was Cindy that did the Chinese. So
yeah,
Cindy,
I mean, it's a great teamwork. Thank you, guys. My question is, you told us about your anxiety part. How do you cope with anxiety? I know a lot of us, our kids have that, and how do we help them?
Well, there's lots of ways to do it. There's lots of approaches, and everybody has to pick the one that works best for them, which usually means you got to try a bunch of different ones to find out what works best for you. I use the Western medical approach. I'm actually on Xanax, which is alprazolam. It's a benzodiazepine type drug. So I don't know if you've heard of Valium drug. Valium is out of the same class of drugs.
Is that a prescribed drug?
Yeah, it's actually considered in the US, it's a controlled narcotic, actually.
I see.
But nonetheless, I mean, it can be certainly prescribed, but it's kind of a pain because you can only get your new refill 2 days before because of the way they control it, whatever. But
controlled. Okay.
But other than that, and a lot of medical literature is now saying that it should never be used long term.
Okay.
Now, I had gone to a psychiatrist that was an older gentleman. He retired about a year ago, and he was 73 when he retired.
Mm-hmm.
So he learned psychiatry a little different than they teach it nowadays.
Right.
And his thought was, you use whatever you have to use to get the person so they can cope and deal and interact with the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, if taking benzodiazepines, which they say now in some newer research that it can lead to earlier dementia.
Okay.
And it's not like it's 100% down. I mean, it isn't studies say that, it increases your percentage by some percentage.
Yeah, they always say that, yes.
Right. Well, is it better that I go around, I'm anxious, so I react poorly to people, I get fired continually, I can't keep a job, my wife wants to throw me out because I'm being miserable all the time.
Right.
Or that I take the chance that, maybe, the last 5 years of my life, I'm just not as bright as I should be.
Right.
You got to balance it out. And his theory was simply do what you got to do.
Right. Right.
Other medical people may not be willing to prescribe it. He retired. I had to go to a new doctor. When I went to the new doctor, the first thing I said, I've been on this regime for 7 years. It works perfectly. Will you prescribe these things? And if he said no, I would have found another doctor.
Okay.
And other things, though, that work, and they work, but for me, they just don't fit in my lifestyle. So I'm not saying that they're bad. I just have a hectic lifestyle, so I don't get a chance to do it. Meditation works very well. And again, depends upon the person, but it does work well. But I just don't have half an hour every day of just time to go, So that doesn't fit my lifestyle. I've done neurofeedback at times. We had a friend that was starting a clinic in California, and he was looking for subjects. So we were flying out to LA. I was studied with a vocal coach. So that's how I learned to not sound what you think of as stereotypical autistic, being very monotone and very boring sounding. I went to the best vocal coach in the world in Hollywood and studied with him.
Wow.
So while we were out there, we would always go over to our friend, and he was setting up his clinic and trying to train his people, and he would just do free neurofeedback sessions for us.
Wow.
And
How did that work?
That was very effective. And of course, that you don't have to do every day, but you do need to do a series of them initially, probably once or twice a week for a number of months, and then you can, reduce the frequency. And now you can even get where you can rent or buy some of the actual medical grade equipment. It's not inexpensive, but you can. But both my wife, who is ADHD, and also she has extreme generalized anxiety, and myself found the neurofeedback to be very, very good. But there was nobody here in Denver that we knew that did it. And, we weren't flying back and forth to LA all the time again. And so, that didn't continue. There's another device that I've used. There's a organization that's called Heart Math. And it's really funny why the name makes no sense, but the word heart math together, just heartmath.com. And they make a device they call Inner Balance. And it just works off of an ear sensor or a finger sensor, but it's just monitoring your pulse rates. But it's not looking at the pulse rate so much, it's looking at the spacing of the pulses. And their whole thing is working on trying to control through the vagus nerve. So the nerve that goes down through your body, through, the heart, to your stomach, to your, that whole nerve, controls how even your heart pacing is. And the more even your heart pacing is, the more steady and calm you are. And then they have techniques that they use that are more along the lines of meditation, but now you have feedback. You actually have this thing that you're watching. The one I like has this medulla that opens and closes, so you breathe along with the medulla. And then it has little things that go around the medulla. It's got little, squares. And if you're doing really good, you get green ones. And if you start doing less well, it goes yellow. And if you do really bad, they start being red. And the idea then, and usually what it is you start losing focus. You're just not paying attention to, and then it goes red. And then, if you start paying attention again, you bring it right back.
What is this called? What is this called again?
Inner Balance is the name of the device.
Inner Balance. How do you wear it?
You just, it's something you would do, sit down and do a session with it, and you can do it for 5 minutes. You can do it for an hour, 2 hours. However long you want.
Is this something you wear?
No, it's just an ear clip for the sensor, or there's a finger sensor that just kind of looks like a little block of plastic with some Velcro strap to hold it on your finger.
Yeah.
I think the ear sensor one, I've got both, but the ear sensor one to me is
I'll look into that.
It's more convenient because the one on your finger, you got a wire coming off of it, and it just. Whereas on your ear, the wire, you can just put it down, you can, have your phone, it works fine.
Wow.
And you can get it where it connects to, now they even do a Bluetooth one. So that you've got a wire and you just got a little transmitter, you just clip on your, shirt or somewhere or something. And then goes to your smartphone and you just watch it on the smartphone, or they have a version of the program that has a little more fanciness to it that will go on a PC instead.
Okay. Well,
So that one's relatively inexpensive. If I remember right, I don't know, $150, $200 range, something like that, versus neurofeedback machines are, $10,000.
Yeah, and you have to go to the
training sessions and such.
clinic to do it.
Yeah, this is, you can just follow their instructions. They do have sessions that you can take, and there's extra education you can take with it. But I found it to be probably as effective as meditation. But the difference is, with meditation, you've got to learn how to meditate.
Yeah.
And for me it's been so long since I've meditated, it'd probably take longer, but when I was actually actively doing meditation, it would take me about 10 minutes or so to really
to get to it. Yeah.
This you just turn on in a minute, bang, you got feedback right away that's telling you how you're doing. So you're instantly focusing on something instead of trying to close out the world like you are in yoga. You got something right there that put your focus on, that's drawing you into that state.
Wow.
So I like it. I think it's a great device. I don't.
People are asking, what is the name? How do you spell that?
Let me see if I can. I'll see if I can find a URL here quick.
Great. Thank you. I think the technology is it's amazing.
Can we just lost him?
Here we go. I'm putting it in chat.
There, he's putting the URL. I'm sorry for my long question. I mean, taking a lot of your time, but this is helpful for other people too, I hope.
Oh, whoops. Let's see. I sent it direct. Let me send that to everybody here. Where's everybody? Everyone in the meeting.
Everyone. Yeah.
There we go.
Right. Thank you so much.
Now, I'm guessing you could probably take off source is equal to Google, whatever from the URL that, because I just did it through a search engine. Okay. But if you just went to the store.heartmath.com/inner balance, you'd go right to it, and you could throw away the rest of it, because that's just tracking you. That's just that's just helping the company make money so they can pay Cindy and I.
Yeah. Really portable device, very small.
And I just saw when I pulled it up there, it was about $200 for the Bluetooth one. So it's not, it's not cheap, but it's not $10,000 like.
No, and it's small. It's portable.
Yeah, just a little tiny portable thing, and
wow.
I've been very impressed with it. I keep saying I should actually start teaching, using it, but you can only do so many things at once.
All right. Well, thank you, Tim, for your information. Very, very helpful.
So next, Tongyi, Tongyi.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So first of all, I want to thank Tim for your very candid talk. And so I really appreciate this presentation and I appreciate your time. I have a question that I want to ask Tim. I've heard that you have done a lot of research on autism, and I want to ask if you are you aware that you are the very a few percentage of people of autistic people who are able to have this kind of I would say intelligence to be able to go into a professional field and be able to actually, even if you have been fired so many times, you can actually be able to get a job and sustain a job for a while. But as far as I read, even 10 kids, 10 autistic people who have completed a college degree, they 1 out of 10 people can actually hold a job. So it is a very low percentage of people who actually can be independent to make a living, even if they have achieved a higher education. So this is
I actually think the statistics are very misleading, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Cindy could certainly also talk to this. How many people do we know, Cindy, that have autism that, work at the same company as we do?
I think I can also
Hundreds,
share a little
right?
bit about Google, because let's say Google are doing a program called self-ID. When people are open to share their status, every year Google is doing this kind of diversity report and encourage people to self-ID to share their status. From that statistic, I would consider 6%. So it's actually a kind of normal range, like 100%, like 6%. Therefore, I would say I totally agree with Tim. The current study of the statistics can be misleading and encouraging people. But we should be powerful, and we should be empowered and feel we are able to do the job like any people.
Yeah, there's just so many autistic individuals. There's two things I think happening to me. Most of the statistics that you read are dealing with kids right now getting out of college. So they're not dealing with other generations. They're dealing with, what do we call the ones now? Gen Ys, so basically Gen Ys, Gen Zs, and some Gen Xers in there. They're already kind of known as being have problems becoming adults. So they're already facing challenges, to be honest with you, even if they don't have autism. And I actually think that the current way, and again, I don't know how it's handled, in all countries, but I know in a lot of countries, US for sure, if the kid gets a diagnosis, they then end up getting a IEP in school. They usually get a special instruction. They get their, basically they get their hand held all the way through. And what happens then is when they get out of college, they've never had the experience of failing at anything, because they're never allowed to fail at something. And they've never actually done any work in their life. They've never had a job. I think, most of us of, older generation, in the US, we call it the baby boomer generation. As teenagers, we had a job. We did a paper route. We mowed the lawn. We did something. I mean, so we already understood working with other people, and we weren't sheltered. It's not that we were set up of here, go out and fail. But on the other hand, that there was first place, second place, third place, and then also ran. That it wasn't everybody gets a participation ribbon. So I think a lot of it is we're looking at a group that I like to say, actually, we're creating disabled autistic adults, not disabled by their autism, but disabled because we've sheltered them so much that they don't know how to deal with the world.
Tim, I agree, but I also disagree. I think, like your generation was not screened at a younger age. So I ask this question, I'm not contradicting your view, is because I see your generation, when you, you presented these kind of symptoms, you are automatically if you are autistic, you are very autistic. You are automatically excluded from the mainstream schooling. You are being pushed over to the retarded part.
Right, they institutionalized people
yes,
who were judged autistic when I was in school.
But, like in my experience, my son is basically mainstreamed the whole way through. And so it is not like they legally they cannot exclude him from the formal schooling of public school. So he is included all the way, but he is the only one from like the district that he has to go through all the tests. Basically, he is just the only thing he is given is 1.5 time in tests. Basically, that's all he gets. Gotcha. Nothing more. He gets special help, like speech therapy, occupational therapy, like once 1 hour, supposedly every week, but that's about it. Even if I, like in high school, even if I said he has so much trouble understanding the classroom education, I asked for recordings. School has the legal right to refuse it. So, and even if I talk to lawyers, they said they cannot contest it based on, you know, the state regulations and the state law. So it's not like, and anyway, so he is the only one in the whole school district with more than thousands of students graduating. He's the only one probably going to a college. So you can see, that's why I'm asking. Actually, most of the autistic kids I know, I personally knew, are not be able to go through the formal education because it's a cookie cutter. You know, they do not provide real special support unless you send them to special schools. You know, I mean, private special schools, they have very small ratio, teacher and students ratio. They have a specialized program. And all these IEPs, I would say most of the IEPs, especially in our states, they are very good on papers, but in reality, they cannot be executed the way that it's on paper. So so basically, I want to ask your personal experience. We are at a point where we do see the potential of higher education. We see the wish, the personal wish of it, but we also see the lack of motivation. We see that he wants to do it, but we see he is very much intimidated or challenged by the amount of work, because not in your case, I can see how well you communicate. You may experience a lot of difficulties, the nuanced difficulties, but for the majority of high functioning autistic students, young people, their trouble is not just nuanced troubles. They have a huge amount of communication difficulties, and that part makes their higher education, I would say, 10 times more difficult than a regular. Yeah, 10 times more difficult. That means it probably takes them 10 times time to study a subject. And that's extremely difficult. And you really need to have a very strong mind and very high motivation to do it. I would say, even if you are a neurotypical person, you will have to have an iron will. Let's just compare to if you don't have your right hand, okay, or if you are half blind, and then you have to finish your higher education. That's how difficult. I don't have autism, so I cannot compare, but I would think that if I have to take 10 times to read the same book and recite it 10 times so that I can remember, that's how I would think it's that kind of difficulty. So we as parents, you know, I'm troubled. I don't know if I should push him to be as much as he can be, or I should just let him do, you know, let him be his natural state. You know, if he wants to study, that's his, you know, he do it. If he doesn't want to, that's his fate. You know, I first of all, as parents, me and my husband, we are very troubled in the decision making, you know, because we all the way, if we do not, we listen to some of the experts, we listen to the school, then he wouldn't even finish high school. But not only he finished high school, he took the SAT, he took all the AP tests, and he passed some, and some he got good grades, some he didn't get good grades. But anyway, he meet every standard of the state requirement to enter a university, and so he finished the first year already. No, very, very difficult, but he did pass everything. So we are at a point where, you know, he wants to continue, but we think it's really hard. And we see that, you know, going to a professional level with that kind of with the education to go into a professional field, it's going to be extremely hard. So I want to ask your personal experience. It's not, I do not see he is at the same level as you are, because in my mind, you belong to the very small percentage of autism Asperger's, that you have very good communication skills, but you lack the nuance part. You probably have difficulty in dealing with social situations, but you really do not lack the part of communication. And also, you know, you said like the memory part, the executive function.
Sorry, can you just let Tim answer your question, please?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
I guess a couple of things. You know, every autistic individual is different. You know, just like every one of us is different. So everybody's going to have a challenge in a different area. Need more support, less support. Different areas they need support. I look at it kind of this way. When you're looking at what should you do? I used to, at one point, I grew bonsai trees, and went and studied with a gentleman who was a master in it, and I learned how to grow bonsai trees. And I couldn't make those trees be what they want to be. I could only create the conditions in which they could grow to be what they needed to be. And I think that's really the way you have to look at it. You can't push him to be what he doesn't want to be. But you can create the conditions where if he wants to, it will encourage him. You know, this is something I tell, and obviously this would be younger children than your son is now. Expose them to lots of stuff. They're going to find something that interests them. And no matter how crazy that thing is, as long as it's safe, you know, we don't want them doing things that aren't safe, but as long as it's something that's, you know, not dangerous, let them pursue. If they want to study bugs, good, let them study bugs. Who cares? You know? So I think the trick is he needs to find what is it that just turns him on so much that he doesn't care how much work it is. And that is how my career has always gone. It's been my special interest, something that I got interested in, made me push and do it because I wanted to do it so much that I didn't care that it was hard. I wanted to do it. And I'm actually a college dropout. Not only am I a college dropout, I dropped out of community college. See, I think the only thing lower is dropping out of junior college. So I don't have a high, degree education or anything, but I work for, one of the toughest companies in the world to get into. Why? Because when I got into computers, I was a fanatic about computers, going back probably 25 years ago. And I'd spend till 3 o'clock in the morning just putting them together and then learning to program them. And then because I wanted to know about them. So I think that's really the trick is you can create the environment so things are available and he has the right things available to him so he could pursue it. But he's the one that's got to make the decision of, this is it. I want to become whatever, and there's no reason he couldn't get a PhD. I know lots of autistics that have PhDs that aren't necessarily Asperger's. I know a guy in Australia who is a nonverbal PhD, autistic. The thing is what autistic individuals tend to be super strong in is if you can connect them to their special interest, they'll do whatever it takes to pursue that special interest.
That goes back to
the trick is it's like, it's like growing a plant or whatever. You got to create the right condition. And when you create the right condition, it just goes. And don't worry about those statistics of only 1 out of so many get employed. And the answer is, it sounds like your son has had the good fortune of he wasn't totally sheltered in school. He got to experience being what you have to be to go into the work world. So he was lucky, to be honest with you, that he was the only one in the school system, because if there was 10 of them, then he probably would have gotten, kind of shoved off and not gotten the experiences he did. So I think he can go as far as he wants to go, but you just have to create the environment. Can't make the decision for him whether he pursues it or not, but if he wants to pursue it, whatever the environment is that he needs to pursue it, then help him. Maybe it will take him 6 years to get through college because he does have some challenges in some areas. So what? Who cares? I mean, if it takes him 6 years, we're all going to live a lot of years, 2 more years, big deal. So I think that's it. You gotta really kind of look at it that way. Just another thing that's interesting. There's an organization here in Denver called TACT, T-A-C-T. And they teach vocational skills to autistic individuals from high school, right out of high school age through 40-year-old is their oldest one.
Yeah, TACT, you call it TACT?
TACT, yeah. T like Tom, A like Apple, C like Charlie, T like Tom. Okay. And they have, I can't remember, there was 87 or 89% placement rate. And they're teaching them trades. They're teaching them to do electrician, wiring houses. They're teaching them welding. They're teaching them auto mechanics. And, I mean, not everybody is cut out to be in a professional role. While I'm in a professional role, I actually had started and ran a manufacturing company, a machine shop, because I thought it would be fun to do. So I didn't know anything about it. And I started and ran it for 10 years. There's a lot of money in doing stuff in the trades. Just go see how much it costs to hire an electrician these days. You'll see how much money there is in the trades. So I think that's one of the problems is sometimes we're not allowing kids these days to have, in the US particularly, we look down on the trades. And that's why you can't get an electrician or a plumber, in when you need one, because there aren't enough of them. They're dying to have those people. So I think you got to give that whole range has to be available. Sounds like your son, higher education certainly is a good fit for him. But it sounds like he doesn't have the focus yet of where is it going to go. He doesn't see where it's going to lead to. He just knows.
Correct. No, he doesn't. And we don't know. And he doesn't know. I think that's a problem. I think it's not just his problem. I think it's a common problem for most people that they don't know what.
So I think that's really the trick is he needs to get exposed through whatever you can to what different kind of careers there are that he could go into in, hit the line of education that interests him. And once you find the one that you want, and it's like that's it. I am going to become a computer programmer, or, I'm going to become an accountant, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But once they have the vision of this is what I'm going to become, now it's just something I got to get through. That's all. I just got to get through this stuff. I mean, I got the ability. I just have to buckle down because I want to be one of those.
So
Okay.
it's very interesting because I just thought about, look, everybody have the diagnosed autism, right? For example, if I'm not speaking properly, look, my son is autistic, right? Tim, you are autistic. You're working for Google. My son is working for part-time janitor. But for my point of view, he to be a janitor is probably more valuable than you working Google, because the janitor is all he can do and he loves to do it. He feel proud. You never see other people see so proud. He said, hey, I can be a janitor. I can be working there, right? So when you're talking about what kind of work you want to be, what kind of children you will be, think about his side. It's not you want him to do anything there. It's he, how he can do it. So, it is just a thought. I know that they have lots of different opinion about how autistic people, how you regarding them. But look, for me, my son doing janitor, he's looking from 2 hours to 3 hours, 4 hours right now. It's so valuable because that's all he can do. He cannot do computer. He cannot go to Google. He cannot even finish, high school. Something that doesn't matter.
But you need the janitor. I mean, the janitor is important. I mean, a company, if you don't have janitors, the company doesn't run. You can't let trash pile up and the restroom turn into a mess.
Exactly.
And I mean, the answer is we, as a society, I think worldwide as a society, I don't think it's any one culture.
Yeah.
We've come to this thing that unless you're at this like certain high level, then you're not bringing value to humanity. Every role needs to be filled, and it needs a person that fills it. And hopefully it's somebody that when they fill it, that's something that they find fulfilling, that they enjoy, that they feel worth from it.
Yeah.
My dad was a heavy duty equipment mechanic. And I mean, he loved doing it. We also think he was autistic, so he liked it because heavy duty equipment, you don't bring to the garage where there's other people, you go out to the field where it broke down. So he didn't have to deal with people. So that was good for him. And, there's satisfaction, even though he'd come home piled with grease and, a mess. When that thing would run again, there's satisfaction in doing that. And that's probably where I picked up the mechanical stuff and ended up, opening a machine shop. And I had more fun. I had as much fun doing that as I do computer programming and such, of doing mechanical, what would be considered blue collar, type labor job. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It was satisfying. You make something, you hold in your hands what you make versus you put it on a little USB stick. There you go. Here's a month's worth of work on a USB stick. That just
different view. Okay, so let's move into next one. Vanessa, you can unmute yourself, please. Vanessa Hugh. Okay.
Hi, so we're here together.
Oh, hi. Hello.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
So great.
We're just curious about some things that happened in my past. As someone who was recently diagnosed as ASD, reprocessing how things have happened in the past with a new lens. And I guess one of the first things that came to mind is on one of my old teams, we had a boss that, from my perspective, promised the world to other departments and teams and then dumped it all on us, his analysts, to deliver on those promises, which is very frustrating. Nobody really said anything to him. But I'm curious if there's something, I guess, in that scenario that I may have overlooked, or what I should have done in that situation instead of just stay silent about it and just do the work.
Transfer departments is what you should have done. Because here's the problem is, I'm trying to think how to put it. Okay, here, I'll tell it this way. I've always struggled to understand how, neurotypical society functions and works. Why is it that telling a lie, hey, geez, you look great today when they look like trash, is considered good, but saying, hey, you're falling apart and you should probably go in the restroom and put yourself back together again, that's bad. Doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it just, I follow the logic, probably like you do. You follow the logic. And so, I knew I didn't understand it. So I started, once I was diagnosed, I started thinking about, okay, I don't understand it. So what do I need to understand it? And it came to me that what I needed was essentially a map, right? I mean, the map isn't the city, but the map guides you through the city. So, okay, now I've got down, what I need. Now, okay, now what the heck's the map look like that will get me through this thing? And the map I came up with was the idea of an indigenous tribe. And you can pick an indigenous tribe anywhere in the world. We really don't care whether it's South America or Africa or Papua New Guinea or where it is. I mean, they all kind of function the same. They tend to be 25, 35 people, a couple family groups, very, very rigid hierarchy. The chief's the chief until they die. I mean, you're not going to go talk to people and vote the chief out. I mean, the chief's chief. And the way that I use that as a map is it's pretty easy to start figuring out where things go wrong from the perspective of how I see them when you look at them in that area. So if, for instance, you were to go to, whatever, HR, whoever, and his boss, and say, that he does whatever he promises stuff and he makes us work real hard and all that stuff. What's going to end up happening is you're essentially you're embarrassing him in front of the tribe is really what it comes down to. And the number one rule is the worst thing you can do to anybody at all is embarrass them in front of the tribe. That is the worst rule in the neurotypical culture. Now, if you and I were working together, you could walk up to me and say, hey, this is jacked up, go fix it. And I could probably say the same to you. And we say, okay, where's it wrong? Big deal. But you got to, if you think of it in that tribe thing, if you call somebody out in front of the tribe, oh my God, the structure is rigid. That's like, the worst thing you can do. You need the tribe to survive. I give you a quick little example. My friend in Australia, Dr. Lutza, when I first met her, she was the head of neurodiversity for the Queensland School District, so biggest school district in Australia. And it was dealing with the staff, not dealing with the students. So she was trying to help the staff understand neurodiversity. And she had actually just been diagnosed with autism. She had ADHD. She knew that for quite a number of years. But while she was in the role, she also got diagnosed as autistic. And she was bitching. I hate to use the word, but bitching is really the only term I can use. She was bitching to me that she was up for, she had done a mental health education program, and she's a phenomenal designer and artist on top of a million other things that she's phenomenal at. And she had done a mental health education program. The school system liked so much, they nominated it for a national award. Now, in the office environment, Mary brings in brownies. Everybody sends emails all around about, oh, Mary, thank you so much. Mary, your brownies are wonderful. Oh, geez, thank you so much, Mary. They're great. But nobody mentions that, Dr. Ireland has a national award pending that she actually won. Not mentioned at all. So put it into the tribe thing. Okay, we're both, similar level in the tribe, or, even different levels in the tribe. I do something that you could do just as well if you were motivated, but I happen to be motivated today, so I bake the brownies. But I'm sure you could bake brownies too. I mean, we can all follow the instructions on the package. Well, it's easy to give accolades for something that doesn't make me look bad, because I could make brownies if I wanted to make brownies. So cool, I'll tell you how great your brownies were and how wonderful you were. But to admit, to say something about how wonderful Dr. Ireland is because she got nominated and won a national award, and she's since won national awards in 5 different design fields in Australia. I mean, she's very good. that is admitting in front of the tribe that I am never going to be up at her level, period, in my life ever. So I just don't say it. We just don't talk about that at all. We just shove that to the side. So can you see how just using that tribe model, how you can kind of work through these complex things that are hard to understand when you just put it in the tribe model? It's pretty easy to start figuring out of, and the answer is often you can't do anything about it because there's so much of this neurotypical tribe stuff. And it comes down to, I say repeatedly, yes, should we change the interview process? Yes, we should change the interview process, but it's not going to change right away. You know, it's going to take a lot of years to do that. And in the meantime, we can't fight human nature. And human nature is, if you can't come and relate to me so I feel warmth and humanness from you, I'm probably not going to hire you. Is that right? No, that is not right. But that is human nature that's been cooked into us over eons of evolution that, you know, in tribe versus those, they're dangerous. They're not us.
Yeah, I think in terms of applying the tribe model, it definitely has the support of the neurotypical world. Socio relationships are everything. And if you embarrass someone, that's pretty strong negative currency in that ecosystem. So I can see why you'd say that would be the worst thing to do.
So yeah, that's how I now navigate it, is I use the tribe model. And the answer is sometimes I don't have enough finesse in the neurotypical ways of being that the best thing for me to do is do nothing about it and just shut up if I can put up with it, or move if I don't, if I can't. Because I know I'm going to fail otherwise, because I just know that this is a very emotionally charged, you know, and not just upfront emotions. I mean, deep built into our evolutionary psyche type stuff. I don't have the finesse to navigate it. And actually, most people don't have the finesse. I mean, sometimes you just, that's it. You're in the small tribe. It's not going to change.
Okay. Thank you so much.
About performance.
My wife is encouraging me to ask about my performance anxiety. Like, in that environment, I did take it super personal when someone said I messed up, because I felt that was directly connected to my self-value. Like, maybe that's tied to realizing I don't have the other stuff of socio relationship skills, and I relied on my performance providing good work. And if someone said I messed up, that was threatening my core value as I saw it. So I guess
it's a challenge. I would say the biggest thing that helped me with that, because I have the exact same problem. I still have the same problem, you know. I mean, it's not that it's changed, but you know, I'm medicated on Xanax 7x24. I take a slow release Xanax. I'm chilled out, you know. It's like, okay, you know, I fucked up, you know. I mean, I screwed up. Okay, you know, what can I do to fix it? You know,
I very recently started methylphenidate. I might have got that backwards, with the generic for Concerta and Ritalin. I started that, and that has chilled me out a lot too.
So I think that's really it, is you've got to get to the point where somehow you can handle the stress, and whether that is through, you know, Western styled medication, through Eastern styled medication, whether it's meditation, whether it's whatever, you got to recognize that the problem is you're so high stressed that you can't handle what's being said. Now, if your stress level was lower, yeah, it might bother you, but you probably wouldn't react anywhere near as bad. And that's what happened for me, is when they finally got my stress level down, yeah, it still stinks and I really don't like to hear it, but you know, I also recognize I do make mistakes from time to time, and yeah, I probably make plenty of mistakes from time to time. And so yeah, I think that's really the trick, is and it sounds like you're pursuing the right way, is get the stress level down. And you know, that heart math thing, it's really cool. Might be worth it if you know, meditation, yoga, those are very, very good if they fit your lifestyle and such. But once you get the stress level down, and then if you can look at it through the tribe model, so you can then analyze it and really see what's going on, not that they're attacking you personally, but you can kind of see it in the, and it's easier to, you know, I guess, what can I say? Accept it even though you don't like it.
Thank you so much for answering questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah, I also want to see that gentleman that you're so lucky you have a wonderful wife. She is so supportive. She encourages you, and
that
I'm
counts for
sorry
a
I did
huge
not
amount.
get your name, but your wife is wonderful.
She's definitely my life coach and my advocate, and she's the one that told me to go get fixed. So yeah,
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
lovely wife.
Yeah.
So I see another one is Dr. Sang. Do you want to talking anything?
Yeah.
Darlene?
谢
Okay.
谢
Yeah.
哎，谢谢何老师，我们昨天刚刚通过电话。Thank you, Tim, for your sharing. I really appreciate your share the different perspectives because sometimes our parents, they train in Chinese context, so they may have different family culture. So I really appreciate all the discussion you just had with them. And my questions is from how does that diagnosis change your decision making those or perspective taking? For example, before you may see, oh, something is different from between me and others thinking, and then getting diagnosis later on, of course, people knows now, probably your wife understands you better about why you behave or make decision in a certain way or communicates in a certain way. But for yourself, how does that diagnosis change your own behavior or decision making? Or I'm focused more on the solution part or reflection part you have for yourself. Thank you.
That's an interesting question, and it's kind of like a question I got from a company I talked to a few weeks ago, and somebody asked, and one of their parts of the question that you didn't ask was, how do you feel about the fact that you were diagnosed so late and that you didn't know these things until later? And the answer was, I don't care. I mean, I lived a good life. I had fun. I mean, it was fine. How does it affect me now? Well, as I said, my working concept of the world, and we all have our working concept of the world. I mean, everybody has their own version, and like you say, culturally, that shapes a lot of our working concept as culture. But then again, individuality, that also shapes your working concept. So my working concept was the world was stupid. That not a really good, effective working concept, but it seemed to fit the facts. I didn't know I was different, and that was it. So once I was diagnosed, then I dug into it. That's when I really figured out it wasn't that the world was stupid. Yes, there are stupid people. I mean, we all have to admit not everybody is, people who are repeat criminals and keep getting thrown in jail. I mean, you can't say they're smart. I mean, that's just not a smart thing to do. But it made me realize, though, the key was in communication. And I had ineffective communication. So now I recognize that that's part of how I came up with that model of the tribe model, because I needed to be able to navigate the neurotypical world where there is a lot of emotional consideration and posturing and looking at how you're how you're relating to people of different levels of stature, and which in the Chinese culture probably is even more rigid than here in the American culture. So now I recognize that was something I needed to consider when I did things. Whereas before I just did what I did and assumed that everybody else was stupid. So as far as changing my decision-making overall, it depends kind of what part of decision-making. If it's part of how do I interact with people at work, how do I interact with my boss, how do I, handle those kinds of situations? Yes, it did change how I look at those, because I understand now there's a lot more going on than what I was aware of. And I created my own models and such that I had some way that now I can relate to it. As far as making other kinds of decisions, but my wife always says to me, why can't you do anything without becoming obsessed about it? Well, I still become obsessed about whatever I do. This is something that maybe, I don't know how anybody feels about or whatever, but, we got into shooting. My wife said, she'd like to start shooting. And so we signed up for a gun club. And when I was a teenager, I used to shoot and had an uncle that had guns, and he used to loan them to us and we'd go shoot. But since then, my wife was kind of against them most of the time. And so we've never, really been involved in having guns around. So back in February 1st or something, we signed up for a gun club. And, I now have 5 pistols. And she's like, you're obsessed. And I've already got 6 and 7, already planned. And she's right, I am obsessed. So it hasn't changed that decision-making. I mean, that's it. I want it. I'm into this. This is fun. This is my special interest. That one's different than this one. I want that one too. So it depends what area you look at, as far as who I am, how do I, pursue things. Well, when I do something, I go in 1000%, obsessive. But my interactions with people and such, that has very much been changed by now understanding that I was autistic, and then starting to learn how that was causing me challenges and creating, models and ways that I could maneuver around it better most of the time. I still mess up, but I'm better at it than I used to be. So hopefully that answers the question for you.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
So we have anybody else there? Any question there? Okay, what should you do when your interest is different from your boss? What do you do? We'll talk about I'm reading the question from the chat. So what should you do when your interest is different from your boss?
You need to change jobs or get a new boss somehow.
Change your boss.
Yeah. I mean, that's the bottom line is you're not going to change the boss's interests. The boss's interests are, I guess this is a challenge that took me a while to learn. And part of this I learned because I became a manager. I used to run an IT department. I, of course, ran my own company. And I don't know if I really saw it then, but after I got diagnosed, then the pieces kind of fit together and I saw and made more sense of it. What my boss is required to do for their job is not necessarily apparent to me. Their job is not my job. If I could describe a perfect boss, and I'm not saying that most bosses are perfect, but if I could describe a perfect boss actually doesn't need to know anything about what I do. I'm not looking for them to be a mentor. I'm not looking for them to be the expert to give me an answer. I want them to clear the path out of my way so I can go at 100% speed doing the job I'm supposed to do. That's what I want my boss to do. Just clear the path so I can go. But you don't know what the thing is you don't know what the boss is being held to. You don't know how they're being measured. You don't know what they've been told they need to get accomplished. And it's not what you're doing by any means. You're only a piece of what fits into their overall thing. So that's, that is how I've kind of learned that even though I may not agree with the boss all the time, I have to also understand that I only understand a piece of what they're actually being asked from their boss. And when you look at it that way, sometimes it's easier to accept that, okay, this may be the best way to do X, but your boss may also need to balance out 5 other things at the same time, in which case the best way, it's still the best way, but the best way would keep him from balancing some of the other priorities that he or she has at the same time. So they go and pick a less, optimum way for X because these other things that you're not seeing because you're not sitting in his reviews when he's getting reviewed. He or she is balancing these pieces out, and you don't see that. You only see your own piece. I guess another way I would put it is I was always told in business that if you have 2 partners and they agree with each other all the time, you don't need one of them. So it's kind of the same. I mean, if you and your boss agree on everything all the time, one of you isn't needed, and it's probably going to be you.
So, Rebecca, you still have any question there?
Yes, Tim, I'm sorry to bother you one more time. So,
fine.
question I have for you, for the medication that after you take it, the mood stabilizing agent calm you down. So after you calm you down, it can change you seeing the things with different view, right? Does it help you? Or I mean, because I see even my son or my husband, I see them sometimes they just like what you saying, it's like tunnel vision, you know, like when like you described this example, and then your boss talking to you, you only heard just that sentence that bother you.
Right.
So after you take the medication, does that help you better to like seeing the whole picture? I mean, able to handle a personal relationship a little bit better? Does that help?
I don't know if I would say it makes me see the whole picture, but it makes me less reactive to something that I may not like.
Okay.
Which almost looks like I'm seeing the whole picture, but I'm really not seeing the whole picture. It's just I'm not reacting adversely to something that was one little piece, because I'm not as stressed out now. I'm not at that, high level. My complaint though from being on lithium is, and I complain to my psychiatrist all the time, he actually called hypomania his CEO disease, because most of his patients that had it were CEOs. And when you have hypomania, working 16 and 17-hour days is easy. And I actually had dual careers. I ran my own company full-time, and I also had a full-time IT career, same thing. So I worked 17, 16, 17, 18-hour days. I finally burned out after 10 years, but I did do it. So my complaint was that it slowed me down, and I can't work 17-hour days now. I can only work like 10 or 12-hour days. And my psychiatrist told me most people would be happy to be able to focus for 10 or 12 hours in a day.
Yes.
But to me, that was a setback. But on the other hand, I wasn't, well, just imagine, if you were working 17-hour days for, months on end, how well are you going to react to things? And the answer is not very well, right? Because you're just, you're stressed out. You just don't have that resilience anymore, because you're so on edge all the time. You're so in order to do that, you got to be so focused that anything that takes you off focus, you don't have the ability to cope with it very well. So you cope and react badly.
So eventually you have to cut to one job, something like that, right? You have to make that determination.
Well, I don't know. I still, my advocacy work and such in autism is it's not a full-time job, but it's a good part-time job. I mean, it takes lots of hours. And then of course I do have a full-time job. So yes, I did need to reduce my level of what I could take on, but it's not as if I dropped down to where, I'm still probably doing way more than most people would choose to do. But I'm not on edge and as stressed about it. I'm much calmer, much more even about it. So things that would have made me just fly off the handle before, now might upset me. I might get frustrated over it, but I don't create a social problem because I, just went, basically I had a meltdown over it. That's really what happened when
Yeah. May I ask, do you, while during this period of time, do you also search seeking the counseling service? I mean, did you do that? Does it help?
Yeah, I have a therapist, and she should be paying me, to be honest with you, because we basically talk, and I teach her about autism, and so yes, I do have a therapist, and most of the time it's me actually teaching her stuff, not her helping me.
See, they may not understand. I really, I wish my husband's here, listen to you.
Well, she's pretty
counselor.
She's pretty good. I mean, she does specialize in autism, both child and adult, but very bright woman. I like her, and So a lot of it is really just talking through these things, which does help me because it gives me somebody who understands it, that I can kind of bounce it off of and work in refining how I talk about it and think about it and deliver the message. So it isn't like a normal therapy session by any means. It's more
Listener.
Yeah,
Listener to you.
but yeah, I do. And I don't know, we'll go months at a time where just our schedules don't line up and we, don't talk. But normally, nominally, at least on the calendar, we have an appointment every 2 weeks. But work gets in the way. She gets sick. She goes on vacation. I go on vacation. So it varies. But yeah, I do.
Thank you. I
of
really
course.
appreciate you being here talking to us all this thing. We learned so much from you. Thank you
Of
so
course,
much.
you're more than welcome.
So maybe we'll take a last one. Jane, you want the...
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much for your speech and for your sharing. And I'm very I didn't see you kind of like any autistic from your presentation today, and I feel it's very amazing. And I want to ask you a question because you can, like in last answer, you mentioned that you can like sit in other people's seat and to think your boss might have 5 different tasks and he might have another way of thinking of this work or thing. And when did you have this kind of mindset? Because my son, he's an Asperger, he cannot think from other people's side. He always think about from his own like opinion. So always have conflicts with like teachers or classmates and so on, and sometimes with me. So how can we guide the children, or how did you find out like other people has their own mindsets? Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that it was, of course, after I got diagnosed, when, until you know what you're dealing with, it's hard to figure out, what's going on. So it was first after I got diagnosed, and then you have to have the desire. You have to want to improve your ability to communicate, to improve your ability to interact. And I don't communicate or interact in the same way that other people necessarily do. I think for lots of people, those emotional nuances and such, they just kind of pick it up. They just kind of sense that this person is getting agitated, or you're, getting to an area that's sensitive for them and maybe you should stop. Or I don't notice that. That's why I had to create the tribe model for myself. So I could I kind of took a logical approach to figure out how to maneuver through those social and communication situations. I actually think that a lot of autistics, I don't know how to put it. I almost think that emotions, the way emotions work, is that I call it a meta sense. And of course, the idea of meta sense is multiple things, together kind of give you a whatever. Because, we can feel that our heart is beating faster, or, that there's like something, going on in your stomach or whatever, but it doesn't tell our brain that, that means we're scared or we're excited or whatever it would that most people would get out of that. We just go, oh, geez, my heart's beating fast and whatever. And it doesn't turn into being an emotion. I actually had to, I was reading a book, and it was called, what was it called? I can't remember what it was. It's by a guy, Dr. Robert Skayer, and he was a emergency room physician for most of his career. And then he became a psychiatrist after like 30 years of being an emergency room trauma doctor. And the trauma syndrome, that's what it was called. And he was convinced that emotions are held as sensations in your body. So I read this, I go in and I ask my wife, are like feelings, are feelings like what you like physically feel? Is that what an emotion is? And she like just bursts out laughing at me. but my body doesn't connect them together. So point being is, before he'll take the effort, because he's going to have to do it through a logical method. He's, you're not going to make that other system work. That's just part of who he is. That other system doesn't tell him, oh, you're upsetting this person. Maybe it's time to back up. So he's got to come up with those more logical approaches, which means he's got to start thinking about, oh, there's more people in the world than me. But to do that, you got to be motivated to want to do that. And at this point, he isn't motivated enough, which simply means he hasn't been fired enough times. You get fired enough times, you start thinking about, there's something going on. I mean, there's only one consistent thing about this, and that's me. I mean, the jobs all changed and the roles changed, the bosses changed, but it was me. So, I think part of it also is maturity. When you're younger, you do tend to be, and this is, I think, for all humans, as you're younger, you do tend to be more self-focused. At 20, I knew everything in the world and my parents were stupid. By the time I got to be 40, my parents were really smart and I didn't know very much. And so part of it is I think the natural progression, and in autism, particularly, I think with boys, with males, it slows down how fast we mature. More than, maybe generally boys mature less, at a low, slower rate than females do anyways, as far as emotionally and socially and such. But I think with autism, it slows it down even more. So it's really, something has to happen that makes him want to improve his ability to interact with the world. And once he gets to that point, then there's all kinds of things that you can do. But you have to want to. I decided I wanted to be able to communicate with the world well. I didn't know what I wanted to teach him at the point. I mean, I've had so much stuff I've done. I've been an entrepreneur. I've worked in piles of industries. There's lots of things I could teach about. But I had to learn how to interact well, how to communicate well, how to connect with people, which as an autistic person is not something that, comes naturally. And I went and I studied with the best vocal coach in the world. And they say, when I say he's the best vocal coach in the world, it's Michael Jackson. He was Michael Jackson's singing vocal coach. Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker, it's his speaking coach. I mean, this guy is the best in the world. And it cost me a fortune. But I wanted to be able to communicate well with people. And one of the things he taught me was, he said, I'm going to teach you to put emotional sounds into every word that you say. And he did. He taught me how to do that. I didn't do that before. I also studied with an acclaimed Broadway actor. That was a whole nother thing that I actually still study with him some. But that was another thing in just learning to make the body, movements and motions, and how to, how to, just move the right way that you're connecting with people. And, but I was motivated. I mean, I wanted to learn this stuff, and we spent a fortune on it. I mean, we spent, I could have gone and gotten a PhD for the amount of money I spent. Probably could have gotten 2 PhDs, to be honest with you, for what it was. But I was motivated. I wanted to learn this stuff. I wanted to be able to communicate with people in a way that I never was able before, because I knew I had things to bring to people. I didn't know what it was yet. It was actually at the acclaimed Broadway actor. It was actually at one of his events that I first publicly said I was autistic. And the short story, which you'll get a kick out of, is he put us into groups. There's 200 people. We're in this fancy theater, and they put you in groups of 4, and you had to do a 3-minute story, whatever topic you wanted, 3-minute story. So you work together, you help each other with story, you give the story to each other, and get feedback. Cut it to 2-minute story. Do the same thing, change the groups around again. Now cut it to a 1-minute story, change groups. Now everybody walks up one by one on the stage and gives their whole story in 1 sentence. First off, it's amazing how long a run-on sentence people can make by adding commas. They have a whole paragraph in one sentence. But I went up on the stage and combining what I had learned from the speaking coach and what I had learned from the actor, and my one, he calls it one true sentence. My one true sentence was, I'm not like you, I'm autistic. 200 people. First time I ever said it, never, outside of, people, personal, connections. But I was motivated. I mean, I was going to learn how to talk about hard things to people, whatever it took. And I guess that's really all I can say is until he's ready, which really means till he falls down enough and it hurts bad enough, he's not going to be ready to start thinking about things and saying, maybe I need to think of things different. It's not the world that's the problem. I'm the consistent problem here. Maybe I'm having a little problem. And not that he's bad. I mean, I'm not saying he's bad, he's wrong, he's a, whatever. But there's some skills he's missing. Until he's ready to accept he's missing those skills, and that's where the challenge is. It's not the world that's the problem. He's going to keep doing it over and over again.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer. I feel I have some hope to the future and some direction.
There's definitely hope. There's definitely hope. And, it never hurts to, again, it's like that, create the environment. It never hurts to talk over the dinner table or, talk with whatever, you're sitting with friends and he happens to be there or whatever. And kind of talk about around the subject and not talk to him about it, just talk in general about it and let him hear that, I mean, I think everybody in life, everybody in life does those things, but for most people, it's so natural, you don't think about it. But talk about how, I was at work today and this person, and they just really upset me. And, let them start hearing that this is something everybody deals with. And guess what? It's not the world that's the problem.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I heard, I from your speech again, you're talking about, if I like something, I put on all my, stuff there. It's like a motivation. It's really important to push you there, and to be an autistic is you have a unique way, because the neurotypical is thinking, oh look, I need to keep a job, I need to finish school. You probably don't. You just want whatever you want, and then you put everything on it. So that's a unique thing. You from your life there. Have you ever writing anything, autobiography by your life, or your interesting story about yourself there?
No, I've never written it down. Now I've got all kinds of videos up on YouTube and stuff, and I stick them on my website in different presentations. And my presentations always have, I talk about personal things all the time. And that's part of what I was trained. You got to talk about your own personal stuff, because that's what people can relate to. You make it all this hocus pocus academic stuff, and nobody can relate to it. They can relate to hearing about me and my wife standing in the aisle and her finding bread every single time that I can't find. I mean, that makes it so clear about, oh, wow, totally. I never even thought somebody looks at it different like that. I'll actually tell you that one just a little bit further on that one. This one's crazy. About 4 or 5 months ago, my daughter's 36 now and lives about an hour and a half away. And she came down for, I don't know where she came down. She came down for something. She was here for dinner, and we're having dinner. And I don't even know how we got about it, but it was potato bread that was my favorite bread. So my wife, I know it was. My daughter was talking about having some challenges with some people at work, communication kind of challenges with some people she works with, and somehow my wife goes and asks about. So you mean like when you're looking at the bread, you see the word potato in your mind, right? And both my daughter and I, she's not autistic, she has ADHD, but she also has some tendencies that, not enough to be diagnosed, but she has some similarities. And she and I both look at my wife and go, no, we don't see the word potato at all. But she's so visual, she actually sees the word. And we said, we just know when you say potato, we just have this knowing of what a potato is. We don't see the word potato. But think about that. How different. I mean, she's heard this story for 6 years. She's heard me tell the story of the bread story. And we just found out that she actually sees the imagery of the word, the thing in her mind. And she didn't have, she still can't figure out. It's like, how can you imagine, how do you know what it is if you don't see something? It's like, well, no, we just know potato. We just know what it means.
Wow, that's very interesting. You have a neurodiversity family. That's very
Well, I think the reality is most of us do, but we all try to hide it from each other. But the reality is we all see the world in a very, in our own unique ways. And, maybe this is a little further than, somebody else, but, just you get with your own family. And if you can get people to start really talking how they see something, you bring up politics or sports, you'll start finding out how, different everybody's opinion is, right?
Yeah. It's very, I think it will get late, but it's so great to hear story from you, all your wonderful life here, experience, and we really appreciate it.
Well, glad I could come. Thank you for
yourself.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we probably will. I think we have a special needs book club, and sometime we'll review those, the seminar here, especially is those in English, and we usually like discussing translated Chinese, then probably discussing further. We were using your recording as one of them too, because lots of people feel very encouraged. I saw lots of the voice there, they see the hope for their own children, of course.
There's
of course.
Hope. There's always hope for every human. I'll give one more thing here. I knew this woman, and it was actually through the Autism Society of Colorado. And she has a son who has Down syndrome. And when she was, a few weeks from being due, they already knew that the child had Down syndrome. And they decided they wanted to keep the child anyways. And her mother said to her, never feel sorry for him, because whatever he is and whatever he becomes is all he knows. Never feel sorry for him. And that's what we have to remember, I think, all the time is, as you say, your son is doing a job as a janitor, feeling very fulfilled, feel like he not just feels, he is bringing value to the world. He's bringing, there's nothing wrong with that just because he isn't doing the same thing you're doing or at the same level of what you're able to do. So I that was so interesting when she said that never feel sorry, because it's all the world he knows. He doesn't feel like he's missing out on anything. His world is great. He's a great kid. I've met him a number of times. I mean, 18 now, he's a great kid. Yeah,
the Down syndrome kids, they're very happy. Probably when you see them smile, they just really smile.
Right from their toes.
No pressure come out there. We have some of the young people from downstream. This is like the baby for everybody. This is a candy for everybody. We love them, really love them. So I will remember that one. Never feel sorry for him. That's very true. They have
right, because that's the world he knows. It's not like he's missing out something. He's got the whole world, just like your world and my world are different from each other, but we're each happy because we have the whole world that fits who we are.
Exactly. That's so great. Thank you very much. Tim, I want to thank Cindy to introducing you to us, and we really appreciate. And I really recommend you writing a book, autobiography, because you have a wonderful life there. It's very variable. When we hear the story,
and also, if being able to connect Andrew from Autistic with Tim, that's also a very great gift for his team to get to the wider stage to help the autistic speak, to make his impact even wider.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. If any of you work for companies that are looking for, somebody to talk to them about neurodiversity, I actually do it as a paid speaker, and I do charge a fortune. But hey, I deliver good value.
Yeah, that's great. We have it. We have my company we call it neurodiversity work trains, which is everybody together, family member, everybody. So we have like lots of, definitely I would recommend it. That's great, Tim. It's so appreciated for you coming to here and hear your story. So again, thank you very much, everybody. I don't think we got time for more, but we can you can looking for Tim's website, timgoldstein.com, right? timgoldstein.com.
Yeah, timgoldstein.com. And you should have, because you're recording, you're going to have the chat.
Yeah, we're recording. Yeah.
But you're going to have the chat also. It saves that, I think, right?
Sure. So
if somebody wanted to take the time to pull the questions out, or if there's a couple of questions that are similar, find the best one and send me the questions in the chat that we didn't get to, I would be happy to answer them.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. All the wonderful story here. I really appreciate it. So we just give another applause to Tim, and have a good night, everybody, and have a good weekend. Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.